Hi, and welcome to another edition of our People First interview series, where we shine a light on great companies that not only do interesting and cool work, but most importantly, look after their people. Identifi Global is a market leader in personalised career management and talent acquisition, with candidate experience guaranteed. I'm really excited today to be joined by Kevin Karue, co-founder and CEO of Lifeium. He actually started his business at the beginning of the pandemic. Lifeium is a legal tech startup that has developed an innovative will creation app and legal operations dashboard for law firms. Their app lets law firms engage with their customers using modern technology and allowing data capture through the app. Kevin, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Pete. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, doing really well, thanks. Kevin, I've probably sold your business terribly, so I do apologise. So explain a bit more for me. A will creation app, how does that work?
It's fairly simple. So what we've done is we've created an app which is really for the end user. So me and you who need to get wills. And what you do is law firms are able to take our technology, model it as if it is their own. And when people call up for wills, they can send them a link and you're able to do all the data that your solicitor needs and jobs.
Okay. You actually started in the legal profession, didn't you? Tell me about that journey. How did you end up being a tech entrepreneur?
Well, it's interesting because before I went to uni, when I came off my A-levels, I actually wanted to do computer engineering.
Okay.
But along the way, my sister-in-law actually convinced me to do law on the basis that I seem to have a knack for arguing. So went and did law. On the back of my degree, I qualified as a barrister. I then decided that I preferred to practice as a solicitor. So I decided to cross-qualify as well. And really, my journey has really been influenced in terms of technology by the fact that I've always had a keen interest in technology. And Lifeium as a company, we incorporated in 2018, and that's when my founders and I met. Wow. So it's been a long journey of sort of modeling our proposition. So along the way, sort of using my experiences working in small law firms, big law firms, looking at the pain points, and because I really understand them, looking at how we can apply technology to solve those problems for lawyers.
How did you find that transition? Was it hard? Was it quite natural because of your interest? Did you experience any challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're in a legal environment where you're in practice day to day, when you've got your litigator's hat on, it's very adversarial. So it's pinpoint focus on to do the very best you can for your clients. Transitioning into the CEO role, which is very commercial, sort of my hands and head is in everything. That requires a little bit of a different skill set. So with the pandemic hitting, that also added additional complications with that. Yeah. So the transition's been really interesting. It's been a journey of learning for me as well as growing the business. So but it's been an interesting journey. Sorry.
As I mentioned, you started the business, launched it, if you like, at the beginning of the pandemic, and as that hit. So can you describe what it was like for you and Lifeium? What were the conversations being had? Was it, this is great, this is terrible? What was the conversation going on between you and your partners?
So we'd come up with a plan, whereas I was going to sort of take a step back from legal practice and really give this a push. And in a little while, maybe I'll talk about my partners, and that will explain why we had to do this. So we came off the back of, all right, we've got a plan, we're going to execute, and then out of nowhere, lockdown happened. That obviously had an impact to the developers that we contracted to do the work for us. Mm-hmm. And so, in terms of ringing up and trying to build your sales pipeline, in as much as we have very good verifiable statistics on the time saving we offer lawyers, understandably, it's not really the first thing on the a law firm's mind. In the at least at the beginning of the lockdown, there a lot of firms were caught out, start to say they hadn't really implemented any agile working technology. So it's just one of those things that we had to really push the conversation. And we were also affected by the fact that development had to be delayed a little bit. So more than anything, it was really just looking for a way to offer something and offer support where we can, in as much as we're trying to roll out an interesting product.
Did it have any effect on your relationships with your partners? I mean, did it put a strain on that? Was it a case of, how did you rally together? What were the questions going on between you and your partners?
I think for us, perhaps we're a little bit unique. So, we've got two founders who are based in Australia, in Melbourne. We also have another co-founder who's based in California, Los Angeles. So it's, we've been very used to working sort of internationally. In fact, I've never physically met some of my, my founders.
Wow.
So with COVID hitting, it didn't really affect our relationship because we're so used to, sort of doing late nights, and you can imagine the time difference between here and Australia. So, in that sense, no. But what it did affect, though, was trying to understand how the market was responding to, trying to roll out the products. One of the things we found is people somehow became busier because they're not in the office anymore. So there's no structure, there's no admin support. So it was really difficult to kind of assess what are the commercial conditions, sort of affecting law firms.
I mean, so we'll come on to the law firms in a moment, I think. But like a lot of startups, you have a small dynamic team. Has the lockdown or the pandemic affected that dynamic? How have you ensured that things carry on as normal? I appreciate you're used to working remotely anyway, but did anything change from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, some changes. For example, our relationships with our contractors, for example. We've got a plan that we've got to execute. We're trying to get out there, get quickly. So, from within the team, we're responding to stressors which are affecting for example, our contractors' ability to deliver. We're also responding to our own challenges in terms of, really trying to get to grips with, we're in the right industry, and in an odd way, this was the right time to launch this kind of business. But, just sort of, facing the challenge, and on me personally, as, leading the sales charge and development charge, I'd probably say a little bit more difficult for me, and relaying that to my founders, because, what you're finding is, on the front line, there is a limit to what you can push. But, you still have to push because it is a good product. It does save time and it is going to help. So, there is always that there was an impact, to our relationship, but, I think for the positive.
So naturally, a lawyer's job is to mitigate risk, and in uncertain times, I suspect that's a big challenge. So have you experienced any difficulties or successes selling technology to law firms, and breaking into the legal sector?
Yes. So I think that the way to look at this is, lawyers are trained in a certain way, and our training is really set in very traditional, sort of concepts. Over time, we have seen technology come in, and there's a lot of companies out there doing very interesting things. But the day-to-day work that's done in your small to medium-sized law firms, and to an extent even some larger law firms, we are very much embedded to process. And for that reason, the smaller to medium-sized law firms do have a challenge because every firm is different. That's something we have to recognize. Technology advocates for standardization of process, but that threatens to take away what's individual of a law firm. So the challenge is getting a law firm to see that you can mold a product to fit the way they work. And I can accept that doesn't work for every law firm, but that's some of the challenges. Cost is another challenge, and decision making. Often, most of the time, the people who do the work are not the decision makers, and for that reason, they don't have the voice to influence the change to a particular technology. So it's really trying to get through to the decision makers to demonstrate the advantages of technology and the cost savings that are available.
Are there any positives, that are going on in the legal sector post-COVID? Is there, there's a drive for digital transformation. This must be a positive for you, right?
Absolutely, there have been some positives. So just to talk specifically about, the area of law that our product touches on. So the Wills Act has never actually been amended, up until this year in July, since 1837. And that requires that, if you create a will, it needs a physical signature. Witnesses have to be physically present when you, as a testator, sign a will. So even if you implement technology, at some point, you still have to print it on paper. and take it to somebody to get that signed. So during COVID, what the government did, and this was largely driven by the law societies of Scotland and England and Wales, was to allow the witnessing of wills via video conferencing, such as on Teams like we are. And they made that into law, so that all wills that have been done since January this year, I believe it's the 31st of January, are valid wills. So that's a positive change, because it does show, the government is recognizing that we need to change the way this wills are executed. And I think that's been a positive change. Another thing I'll touch on quickly is we've seen court hearings go into remote sort of hearings. Now, there are challenges with that, if you think about witness credibility and the like, but there's a vast number of cases that are not complex, and you don't have to go and spend a whole day in court waiting for your case to be called up. So I think that's a positive change.
Yeah, massively. This is something that I've experienced recently, just through my own family, and a family member passed, and they're trying to go through probate, etc. So yeah, absolutely a huge change, and without something like this, it would make it even more difficult.
Yeah. I mean, my condolences, and it's really the way to think about this, and is that if technology can help to ease the process, then as and when unfortunate scenarios do happen, like for example a loved one passing away, then you maybe help to prepare for your loved ones, your beneficiaries, and the like who are left behind.
Yeah. Has lockdown allowed you to, I guess, take a bit of time, or maybe any age? This is, I guess, time that you're not necessarily going to be given again. So has this allowed you to do anything different, or just rethink your strategy? Or
I think yes. So as a virtual business, if you like, you would like to think we're one of the ones who are not going to be affected in terms of working arrangements. But reality it's given me the time to sort of assess what's been happening around us. How have businesses, how have our potential clients been affected? How have we internally been affected in terms of, if you think about employees or, people who do work for us, and how you monitor that, and just trying to, to think ahead and see, what can we do better if the circumstances were to continue? What can we do differently? And how can we perhaps engage with our community around us a little bit better? So it's really just sort of taking a moment to step back and think and realize that, we just have to, sort of dig in and just prepare for any difficult situation that could be coming around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. What about funding? Are you VC backed? Are you crowdfunding? What's the plan in terms of growth?
So at the moment, we've sort of bootstrapped, the shareholders, which comprise of the, mainly the shareholder, the founders, who are also mainly the main shareholders of the company.
Yeah.
We've sort of put in money in the business to get it to where it is now. We are in the process of making a major fundraising drive, and in the past we've tried to go for various competitions here and there, and so at the moment we're probably about a couple of weeks away from launching our major fundraising drive. So really excited by that, and hoping to sort of engage a lot of people who like Lifeium and what we do.
Great. Well, this is hopefully a platform where who knows who's listening to this. So I know obviously you're going to be looking to grow your organisation, after successful funding, and obviously taking on some new clients, etc. So I guess this is the people aspect. What does leadership mean to your organisation? How do you intend to apply this in a remote working environment? And I guess to give that a little bit more context, I know that from our previous conversations that this particular a will app, your product has a purpose, right? It affects people and in real critical times. So it's not just a product, it affects people's lives. And yes, it makes the lawyer's job a bit easier, but ultimately, you're taking a complex scenario, probably quite a horrible thing to do. No one really wants to create a will, do they? So how does that feel, and does that transition into the people that work for you?
I mean, I think for me, leadership has two elements to it. The first one that I think is very crucial is the culture that you're sort of created in a business or in an office somewhere.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky that towards the tail end of my training as a solicitor, I had the opportunity to open the first branch office for my, previous employer. So I ended up in a situation where I was probably one of the more, senior members of staff, still as a trainee solicitor, sometimes even supervising qualified solicitors. And, that was really fortunate because I got my own time to experience what does it mean to create a culture. And coming off the back of that, then into Lifeium, I think you've really got to think what is your culture that you want to create, because that culture is what will pull people together when things like COVID-19 happen. It's what will understandably give people the impetus to want to give you more when you shouldn't demand more from them. And then on the back of that is transparency. So, within our team, transparency is something that we value as our key and utmost attributes that we must give to each other and demand of those who work with us. And transparency is so important because you always will know what's going on, and it gives you the opportunity to deal with things as and when they happen. So when we think about employees, and that's kind of the driving force of what I think leadership is for us. And on the back of that, what we do, obviously, as you've said, it's not the most interesting topic. We're talking about essentially death, and nobody's, the wider public are not engaged with that topic. Everybody thinks we're going to live forever, which is, not true. So the education point here is a power of attorney is a very important document. It's as crucial as setting a budget. But we know common reasons why people don't do it is, for example, the antiquated traditional legal system in terms of how you engage. If you've got to go down to your solicitor's office and spend an hour doing data entry, that might put you off from actually doing anything. If I send you a 14-page questionnaire, you'll be thinking, you know what, I'm gonna do this when I've got my own time. So, and a lot of younger people also think, I haven't got enough things, I haven't got enough assets. And, this is a document that comes into effect in the unfortunate event of your passing. So if I said to you, pay £200 a day, get a will, versus your beneficiaries could lose up to 40% of the value of your estate. And if you own a property or properties, you can see how 40% of a couple of £100,000 is quite significant for the fairly, modest price of £200. So there is a purpose, and we're hoping, and we do try, and a lot of the articles that I write as well, try to educate the wider public on the need to have a will, the need to go to your local solicitor or somebody and just get your affairs in order.
Absolutely, I'm totally on board with it. I, speak from personal situation. I don't have one, and it's just one of those things you think, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. That sort of mentality.
You can get yourself one. Well, hopefully in the near future, many solicitors will be using Lifeium technology or similar type of legal tech that just helps to improve. Because what we're saying is, in 15 minutes or less, you've given the solicitor all the data that they need, and all you're waiting for is a review. So we're cutting down the time it takes to get the legal service that you're paying for. So
we completely get how it helps the customer. People like me, it's one of those things. Certainly I would much rather be tech driven. The going into a law firm to talk about will just seems a bit, I'm not quite ready for that yet. And how does it benefit the law firms? What's the benefit to them then?
So what we've based on our research and having brought the product to market, what we say essentially to law firms is we save an hour of billable time per client, and that's really broken down to time spent on collecting data, time spent on signing up the client, and time spent on doing other related admin tasks. So if your hourly rate is, for example, let's say £200, and we're saving you about an hour, that's, we equate that to approximately, in terms of the cost of what we charge, it's about 25% of your hourly rate. Now, propagate that hour time saving across all the clients you're going to speak to in a day, in a week. Process automation exists to give you back the time that you should be using to do what you're actually trained to do, which is give legal advice. It benefits law firms in that sense. It also benefits other users of the product, because your admin staff are able to sort of get certain things that are very repetitive done, very quickly. There's a lot of cost savings. And the more fundamental point is lawyers are trusted members of the community. People still prefer lawyers to do their wills. So, the benefits lawyers get with our technology is, they're getting to leverage their position as trusted community members, and level up to any competition that's coming up who have online offerings.
Yeah, Yeah. And I guess hopefully more customers.
Absolutely. More volume. Time saving actually does equate to more volume.
Yeah. It's one of those things, I guess, one of those things you don't tend to change, is it, your lawyer? If once you're in with them, you tend to stick with them unless they annoy you or something. But it's a long-term value customer if you're signing them up, especially earlier in the process.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite right. So, we know and we appreciate that there are good reasons for the processes that as lawyers we follow. What we're thinking is, it's time, because disruption is inevitable for this sector. What my personal belief is, as a lawyer and as somebody who looks at things from the inside, I try to sort of bring in technology that involves lawyers in the process, because as much as we've got AI and automation coming in, you still need a human element. You're still going to need a human person, a human lawyer to do these things. So it's just taking the best of process and merging it with technology, really.
Yeah, fantastic. We're going to completely change direction now. So from pandemic to Brexit, how do you see Brexit affecting the legal market and maybe the legal tech market? Do you see any changes, any positives or negatives?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So the Brexit, it's an interesting one. So a couple of years ago, when I was doing my dissertation, I actually wrote about Brexit in a shape or form. And this was way before the referendum. At the time, I was hypothesizing what would happen if one of the countries, at the time I focused on Greece, really, when they had this really big debt issues. A couple of years later, Brexit actually happened, a little bit surreal because at the time it was just a hypothesis. But there will be some changes inevitably. So the work that I did was immigration-related work, for example, in public law. So freedom of movement is something that has benefited the UK immensely in terms of a valuable work resource. Now, from 1st of January, what we're saying is European workers are no longer able to freely come in, and certain industries are going to be heavily affected. And I know firsthand how difficult it is, and I know you certainly have a lot more considerable experience on this. To how difficult it is to find good employees, good competent people who are really looking to work and so on. So the sad fact is, and looking at how it's been handled, there is going to be an impact, probably negative in the beginning, but just like the pandemic, I believe we'll come through it.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's the biggest aspect of our job is candidates, and bringing them from all over the world is absolutely necessary, and I think they need to find a route to bringing those highly skilled people in.
Yeah, you need to fill the gap from somewhere, and anybody looking at this with any reasonable sort of thought would have seen, if you take away a bulk source of human capital from the equation, you need to fill that in from somewhere. So it's going to have to come from somewhere, and that it's just going to be opening up borders to the rest of the world, which is not a bad thing, but it's just the net effect of we're leaving to balance out the numbers as one of the key factors. Well, that's not really going to happen, and economically, it's even more difficult because some industries will be heavily affected.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would have thought we're nearly 3 months towards the end of the year? It's crazy, and we seem to have just that time's passed by. We only need to look back a few months, and people are, we've been in lockdown forever, and here we are, sort of getting, well, we're back in lockdown to a certain extent, but we're getting closer to the end of the year. Do you see any changes over the next few months in the legal industry or the legal tech sector? Do you think there's going to be any major changes, or is it a case of riding out this year and looking forward to next year?
I think there's going to be some, there has already been some good change. Earlier, I mean, I think one of the other things that I would mention is, COVID has forced law firms one way or the other to either quickly adapt and change, or at least it's brought the conversation to the forefront. So it's taken away one of the barriers that legal tech firms face in introducing technology, because now people have experienced it, and really experience is one of the best ways to convince somebody to take up something. So I do think that in the coming months, we're going to see a lot more engagement from the legal sector, from the majority of firms, which are small to medium sized, sort of participating in the conversation about how to adopt technology. And I hope and I think the government will bring in a lot of industry professionals into the process. Countries like Estonia are very, very advanced in terms of implementation. They've been using sort of AI judges for a while now. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that's where we need to go, but it just, as an industry, you can take advantage of these things to help everybody who's touched by the justice system. So that's where I see in the next sort of year, there's going to be a lot of activity in the legal tech space.
Fantastic. It's got to happen, hasn't it? Really, let's be honest. We've hurled ourselves forward. I think the technology was there and coming, and in certain sectors, specifically legal tech, it's launched it just forward at a faster pace. So good luck to you in that sense. So a couple of last questions then, Kevin, if that's okay. And I always ask these at the end of these sessions. In your opinion, what are the secrets to an engaged remote workforce?
So this is a challenging one. I have to say, it's probably and I think for a lot of people, it's probably the first time I've had to sort of work in a position where you're, to an extent, perhaps, supervising others, and it's completely remote. I think that it's just really finding ways to engage on the very necessary points and not drag on meetings for ages on end. So just keeping that constant engagement, but keeping it very relevant, because when you're working from home, you have a little bit more flexibility with your time, but you've got to find ways to sort of touch base with your staff and even amongst employees, but keep it very, very relevant. And I think personally try and minimize the amount of time, because somebody's inevitably going to spend a lot of time on their laptop or other device. So, try and keep that to a minimum, because they're inevitably going to be doing that for a long time from home.
Absolutely. We've seen the studies it's that people have become more productive, but they're also working longer hours because it's harder to switch off. And, I think, that regular communication that you talk about is critical, because it's just easy just to have one big long meeting, because you haven't done it throughout the week. Whereas before, when you're sitting in an office, you can just say, hey, how are you doing? Or let's have a quick chat, or let's go and grab a coffee. Whereas now, well, certainly at the start, people jumped on a conference call, and because it was a conference call, they felt like it had to be a long, formal, drawn out process. But actually now you can just pop in, say hi, how are you doing? How are we getting on with that? And I think we've certainly seen a shift from that quick email, which is what you used to do, to a quick video call now. And I think that it makes a big difference, just to see a face, say hi, check in, and like you say, at the end of the day, making sure that they're getting that balance and they're not working through till midnight or whatever it looks like. So
yeah, sort of like I'd like to see those bite-sized sort of engagement points, really, because I think sometimes you think, oh yeah, we've had a long meeting, and then they must be fine, they're cracking on, but the reality is it's not helpful. Everybody is exhausted when it's very long, but when it's nice and short and fairly regular, then it keeps it relevant, keeps it focused, and people are engaged.
Great. And then my final question, so what's the biggest piece of advice for other leaders in the legal tech sector, maybe even on the brink of starting up a business right now? So what piece of advice could you give them for navigating this period and I guess moving forward?
I mean, I've reflected on this, coming at the back of this. So it's been 6 months of sort of doing this, and towards the end of July, I kind of had the opportunity to go mountain climbing in the Kilimanjaro.
Wow.
Story for another day, but my whole experience of climbing a mountain, sort of we were by the spa ourselves, was you've got to keep going. It's going to get hard. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes you get a win. I think resilience is something that you need to have more than anything as a startup and as any legal tech business, because for businesses like us, we're a B2B business. So it's not the same as selling to the consumer. So you've got to have your resilience. And I'd probably say the other thing is, just focusing on the product, really, getting that feedback as quickly as you can from the market, and just implementing that as quickly as you can. For me, I think that's really the advice I'd probably have for other legal tech startups. But it's an exciting journey, and one that I'm very fortunate to continue. And I've got a fantastic team that supports me. So that's all I can say.
Love that. Yeah, love that. Kevin, I feel like I could talk to you all day, and you know, I certainly you can't just drop the Kilimanjaro in at the end of the conversation, and we not have to talk again. So yeah, let's get that arranged for another time.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to talk you through that, and I'd highly recommend everybody to do it at some point. But we can always catch up later on that.
Fantastic. Well, that's it for today. If you're interested in joining a fast-growing legal tech business, please get in touch with Kevin either via LinkedIn, where you can find his details, or you can go via the Lifeium website. I'm sure you'll agree he's got a fantastic business and is going great places. So if you're an investor looking to invest, now's the time to reach out to him. Funding is open, and we'll try and share some details when we put this post out. Kevin, good luck. Thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks, Pete. Really enjoyed it.